Good morning, students. In this part of the lecture, we are going to discuss about construction of sheet pile walls and coffer dam. So let us first begin with understanding about what is a sheet pile wall. So let us see what are the sheet pile walls. As you can see in this picture, these are the sheet pile walls. So sheet pile walls are nothing but they are the retaining walls which are constructed to retain earth, water, and any other filling materials. And if you see this sheet pile walls, when it is compared to the masonry walls, they are thinner in the section. So these sheet pile walls are mainly they are used for this following. The first one is it is used for constructing the waterfront structures such as building wharves, quays and piers. And it is used for building the diversion dams like the coffer dams. And the sheet pile walls are used as the riverbank protection, and it is used for retaining the sides of the cut made in the earth. So now let me move on to the next slide. So here in this slide also you can see a clear picture of this retaining walls. I think you can see the retaining walls over here. Just a minute. So I think you can very clearly you can see the sheet pile walls along with the folded plates, everything you can see clearly in this picture when compared to the previous one. See, the sheet piling, they are used for providing the temporary and the permanent walls in the construction industry. So mainly the sheet piles are used as the excavation supports, and they are used as the soil retention. So this sheet pile walls, they create the border, as you can see here, they create the border that is across the project site, and which keeps the soil back and away from the structure. So this sheet pile wall, it creates the border along the project site, and it keeps the soil back and away from the structure. So now let me move on to the next slide. So let us see what are the technical details of this sheet pile walls. So if you see this sheet pile walls, they are designed to interlock with each other. As you can see in this picture, you can see this interlocking of the sheet pile walls. So they are installed in sequence along the planned excavation perimeter. So the sheet pile walls are designed to interlock with each other, and they are installed in sequence along the planned excavation perimeter. So when they are all arranged together, they form as the walls of permanent or the temporary earth support, and along with the anchors to give the extra support. So this permanent sheet piles, if you see, they are designed to give a long service life, and they are installed with the help of the vibratory hammers. If the soil is too dense or if it is very hard, so in that case we can go for using the impact hammers. So depending upon the conditions of the site, these sheet piles, they can also be hydraulically pushed into the ground. So they can also be made by using the recycled steel, and it can be reused for the other purposes, making them a sustainable option. So now let us understand what are the different types of the sheet piles. So the first one is the timber sheet piles. So if you take the timber sheet piles, it can generally be used for the shorter spans, and they are used for resisting the light lateral loads. And they are used for the temporary structures such as the braced sheeting in the cuts. So if the timber piles, if they are used in permanent structures above the water level, they require some preservative treatment. But even if you do the preservative treatment also, their lifespan is very much short. And if you see the timber piles, as you see in this picture, they are joined together by this sort of tongue and groove joint, as you see in this picture. So this timber sheet piles, they are not suitable for the soil consisting of the stones because the stones could dislodge these joints. So this is all about the timber sheet piles. Now and you can see the picture of this timber sheet piles. So this is the timber sheet piles, and you can see the additional support is given here for the timber sheet piles. And here also you can see the timber sheet piles without any additional supports. Now let's move on to the next one, the next type, that is called as the reinforced concrete sheet piles. So this reinforced concrete sheet piles are the precast concrete members, and they also have this sort of the tongue and the groove joint. And these type of the piles, if you see, they are very much heavy and also they are bulky. So when they are driving, when they are drive into the soil, they go for displacing the large volume of the solid. So this large volume displacement of soil, it tends to increase their driving resistance. So that is why the suitable reinforcement is given considering the large driving stresses for the reinforced concrete sheet piles. So now you can see this picture of this reinforced concrete sheet piles. So everywhere you can see these are the reinforced concrete sheet piles. So now let me move on to the next slide. So in the next slide, let us discuss about another type which is most commonly used, that is called as the steel sheet piles. So if you see the steel sheet piles, they got a lot of advantages when compared over the other piles, and we'll see what are the advantages. If you take the steel sheet piles, they are very much resistant to high driving stresses, and it is a steel section, so it is lighter in section, and we can use the steel piles, these steel piles for several number of times, and they can also be used below or above the water, and usually they have a long lifespan, and the suitable joints can be provided so that they can be used to provide a continuous wall. And also you can increase the pile length either by bolting or the welding. So these are the advantages of the steel sheet piles. And here in this picture, you can see the steel sheet piles which are stacked, and you can see this end joints and all very clearly in this picture. So next, let me explain to you what are the different shapes of the steel sheet piles. So we have different shapes, the straight steel piles. As you see in this picture, these are the straight steel piles. So you can see these are the straight steel piles. So when you use the straight web piles is when the webs are subject to tension, as it is in the cellular cofferdams, we can suggest this straight sheet piles. So the next shape it is called as the shallow arch steel piles. So when you can use this type of the pile is for the less bending moment, you can use the shallow arch piles with small section modulus. So the next one is called as the arch web sheet piles, and also we have another type that is called as the Z-shaped sheet piles. So these type of the piles, they are used for resisting the large bending moment, and I can also see the depth is also very high in these type of the sheet piles. So now let me move on to explaining how we go for joining the sheet pile walls. So sheet piles are often connected together in pairs, and they can be installed by three methods. So the first method which we are going to discuss is called the vibration method. So the vibration, if you see, this is the most common method. So here what we do is the first sheet pile of the wall is is installed into the ground. So we use this sort of the vibratory hammer with a clamp is attached to the top of the second sheet pile, and which is then it is interlocked with the first sheet pile, and the sheet pile is vibrated into the ground. So this is called as the vibration method. So first you're putting the first sheet pile into the ground, and in the second pile you're fixing this sort of vibratory hammer, and then you'll be like going to like make the second pile to be interlocked with the first sheet pile, and then the sheet pile is vibrated into the ground. So this is called as the vibration method. So the next one is pressing method. So we also have another method called the pressing. So this method can be like where like the sheet piles are pressed into the ground, but like here like the problem is like it will be a lot of noise, and the vibrations also will be very heavy. So this also takes a longer time, and this method is very expensive. So here the sheet piles are pressed into the ground by means of the hydraulic machine. So this is called as the pressing method. So the next one is excavation. So the third method is called as the excavation. So in excavation, the sheet piles are excavated into the soil. So what we do is this sort of long trench is excavated, then it is filled with a cement bentonite. That means already we have seen what is bentonite. It's a thin concrete slurry which prevents the walls from collapsing. So the sheet piles are then installed into the trenches, and the cement bentonite is allowed to set. So that is all about the excavation process. So these are the three different methods by which you can go for joining the sheet pile walls. So the three methods are vibration, pressing, and excavation method. So to make you to understand clearly about this sheet pile method, let me share with you some of the pictures which are taken at the project site. So here you can see the huge steel piles which are like, kept in the stacking yard. So you can see the size of this sheet piles. And this is the hammer and the power pack which is used for, for the sheet piling. So this is the hammer and this is the power pack. And you can see here the people are like doing the fabrication of the guide frames at the project site. And this is the completed that is completed guide frame. So this is the fabricated guide frame. And now you can see like people are like doing the counterweight loading for this 955 crane, hydra crane. So this is the crane which is used for the installation of the sheet piles. And now you can see this crane is being used for the erecting this guide frame, and to keep this guide frame in the position at the project site. So people are positioning and aligning this guide frames. And in here you can see after positioning they are after positioning is completed, they are placing the counterweight so that this guide frames doesn't move. And now we can see the shifting of this piles from the stacking yard, and now you can see this positioning of the power packing, and then you can see the positioning of the vibro hammers, and you can see there is a hole cutting in the sheet piles to lift, and you can see the sheet piles are like they're shifting near the guide frames. And here you can see the sheet pile is being inserted through the guide frames to rest on the ground, and here the hammer is going to attach to this sheet pile. And you can see the driving is in progress. So next the sheet pile is being, it is you can see one pile, and the next pile it is it is being set for driving. And also people are measuring the vibrations here, and you can see the two consecutive sheet piles which are already driven up to the top of the guide frame. So you can see the series of the sheet piles which are already driven up to the top of the guide frame. And you can see the take hold of the sheet pile by the hammer for further guiding. And after further driving one by one up to 300 mm above the ground level, you can see one by one. So after that, everything will be inserted into the ground. So the guide frames will be taken, and it will be like inserted one by one. So this is the diagram that is showing the side elevation and the end elevation of this sheet piles. So you can see everywhere, like you can see this sheet piles are there. And we'll see these are some of the disadvantages of the sheet piles, which you can see, you can read through the slides. And